What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I just wanted to do a sort of D&D 101 video on actions in combat. These are more actions in general, but they really come into play when it's a combat scenario. So I'm not going to do combat in general. I'm not going to talk about the different rounds, surprises, initiative, things like that. Just basically things you can do on your turn and the few times you can do stuff when it's not your turn. So, let's talk about classifications of actions and what you can do first. I'll save the action for the last because that's the one that lets you do the most things. So every turn on your turn, you can do the following things every time. You can move up to your character's movement speed. You can take a singular action. You can do an object interaction and potentially a bonus action. Why do I say potentially a bonus action? The only time you can do a bonus action is if you have something that says it's a bonus action. So there is situations where most characters may never have use of a bonus action. For instance, a rogue at 2nd level has its cunning action ability, which lets them hide or I think disengage or maybe dash as well as part of their action or as a bonus action, which therefore that means they can do that. If you're a spellcaster and you have a spell like Misty Step, which is a bonus action, that means you can do it. If you don't have access to a bonus action of any kind, you just don't get one. That's it. What's an object interaction, you say? There's a whole table on page 190. But basically, you can do a free interaction. Like, let's say you have your sword at your belt, right? And you want to attack, you can interact with that object, draw your sword, and still attack, and that's free. 2 interactions, like you could draw your sword, but you couldn't stow it away on the same turn because this is one interaction, this is another. So to do a second interaction, you'd have to use your action to do that. You can move to a door and open it as part of your action. You can do all sorts of things. Withdraw a potion from your backpack and then drink it as your action, or pick up a weapon that you dropped on the ground and then use it to fight. Those are all for free that you can do one per turn. Additional uses of interactions, you have to check specifically with your dungeon master because everyone has different rules, but that is the base rules of D&D. Those are one object interaction. You can do it typically as part of whatever the flourish that you're doing, again, drawing and attacking, opening a door as you're running, whatever it is. But singular or secondary ones will require you to use your action to do so. So that is your turn. The only caveat to that is fighters who have access to the ability Action Surge, which gives them another action. When we get to the action later on in this video, any of the things I will describe there, a fighter or anybody that has access to Action Surge can do that an additional time per turn. And the last type of action is a reaction. A reaction is taken at any point during it. It can be after your turn, it can even be on your opponent's turn, it can be during a friendly character's turn. And again, a reaction is typically something that you need to have a specific trigger to do so. The couple of examples that you don't require anything to do so is an opportunity attack. So if an enemy moves into your combat range and then out of it, you can make a free attack on them using your reaction. So that's one way to do that. Or if you choose to take the ready action, which again we'll talk about later, and delay your turn to attack later, then you can use your reaction to do that. You get 1 reaction per turn, so if you make an opportunity attack against one guy and he runs away, all of his buddies can run right by you and you won't get free shots on them. Some spellcasters have reactionary attacks, like the spell Shield is a reaction. In reaction to you getting hit, you cast Shield to try to block the damage. Bards have access to Cutting Words, an ability that works on your reaction, where when somebody's going to get hit, you can use Cutting Words to reduce the damage, reduce the to hit, or reduce their roll on their save to make it harder for them to, easier for them to fail, things like that. There are, again, several other options of reactions, but those are specific to the archetype or the class feature. So, we've covered movement. Movement, I guess the only other thing to talk about that is you can move up to your speed on your turn for free, which is typically 25 or 30 feet if you're on base character movements, unless you're in a Rakra from the Elemental Evil Players compendium there, you can move up to 50 feet with your fly speed. If you have different movement speeds, it's still whatever the max is. For example, if you have a movement speed of 30 and a fly speed of 60, because someone cast fly on you or what have you, you can fly 20 feet, drop down, walk 10 feet, and then leap into the air and fly another 30 feet. That's still within your 60 feet, your max movement speed. You can break up your movement, so you could attack somebody, move, attack somebody again, or move, attack, any kind of mixture that you want to break up. If you have multiple attacks or multiple actions, you can move and attack, and there's no penalty for that. You have no benefit of standing still and attacking versus attacking and moving around the person. As long as you don't leave their line of sight, their combat range, you don't provoke an attack of opportunity. There is no more 5-foot step if you're familiar to previous editions, where you could take like a 5-foot step to attack somebody else without provoking an attack of opportunity. There are ways to get around that, but we'll talk about that later. The only other thing that is really caveats to movement is difficult terrain. If through it being rocky and natural terrain, through it being the use of a spell, something like entanglement, or I don't know, there's a couple of different spells that will make the terrain around you difficult. Difficult terrain requires double movement. So if you're on a grid and it's a 5-foot grid, so you move one step, that actually costs you 10 feet of movement, and so on and so forth. Additionally, being knocked prone, if you drop prone to try to avoid an attack, or you're knocked prone through the use of a spell or a shove ability or something like that, to stand back up from prone to your upright position is half of your movement. So unfortunately, if you get knocked prone in an area of difficult terrain, it's your entire movement, because you're standing up, and then it uses half of your movement, and your movement is already halved because of the difficult terrain. That's your whole move, is just standing up. So that is a potential spell combo or attack combo that I've seen used in their various games, where like the spell Spirit Guardians makes terrain around you difficult terrain. If you knock somebody prone, them just standing up is their whole turn. So that's a way to go about doing things. Alright, so let's move on. Again, I've talked about moving around other creatures. You can move through a space, like a friendly character's space. You can squeeze through a space that is large enough for a creature one size smaller than to it. Thus, a large creature can move through a passage that's designed for a medium creature, but it takes, I believe, double movement to do so. Yeah, double movement to move through space that's larger. And trying to move around, I believe you can move through your friendly let's see if I can find the exact situation. Breaking up difficult terrain. Sorry, guys. Yeah, you can't move through a non-hostile creature space. In contrast, you can move through a hostile creature space only if they are 2 sizes larger than you. Unless you're the one type of halfling, it allows you to move through, or maybe it's just halfling in general, you can move through creatures that are only 1 size larger than you. Doing so, that is difficult terrain. You can't end in the same space as a friendly or an enemy. If you leave a hostile creature's reach during your move, you provoke an attack of opportunity, as I talked about. So, now we're on to the actual action part of combat, but let's recap. So on your turn, you can take an action, you can move, you can do an object interaction, you can do a bonus action only if you have something that lets you do a bonus action, and you can take a reaction on anybody's turn. It could be yours, it could be an opponent's, depending on the situation. So what can you do as an action on your turn? You can attack. You can choose to say, I take the attack action, and most classes, this will be 1 attack. So you swing your melee weapon, you shoot your bow, whatever it is. Martial classes like barbarians, paladins, rangers, your fighters as well, they all have access to, monks as well, they have access to something called extra attack, which is when you take the attack action, you get another attack. So when you take the attack action, you swing once, then you could swing twice. Or again, like we talked about, you can break up your movement, swing, move, swing, move. If you're a fighter, you have upwards 3 and some at very high levels even 4 attacks. So when you take the attack action, you can swing 1, 2, 3, 4 if you would like. If you were to, say, be a fighter with 3 attacks or 2 attacks and take action surge, you could go 1, 2, 3, action surge, 1, 2, 3. It lets you take another use of an action. For you, this could be just a bunch of attacks to try to do one kind of Nova round where you use as many attacks as you can. You can also cast a spell. Any spell that says it has an action, one action to cast, you can cast on your turn using your action. That's pretty self-explanatory. Again, if you are a spellcaster that somehow has taken levels of fighter to get action surge, you can cast a spell and then follow it up with action surge and cast another spell. 2 spells in a row, which is one of the only ways to do that aside from a couple things that sorcerers can do. You can dash, which allows you to move additionally whatever your movement is, you can move that again. So if you have a 30-foot movement speed, you can move 30 feet and then dash to move another 30 feet. So you can get a 60-foot total movement speed. You can disengage. If you disengage, which is your whole action, it will allow you to move up to your movement speed without provoking any attacks of opportunity for the rest of your turn. So again, if your movement speed was 30 and you chose to disengage, you can now move 30 feet and no opponents will be able to attack you. This is one of the really good features of, say, a rogue, where you can disengage as a bonus action so you can move away and then still attack. When you take the dodge action, you have disadvantage. All attacks against you have disadvantage, and as long as you can see them, if they cast a dexterity-based saving throw spell, you have advantage on the dex saving throw. You can take the help action, which if you're next to a creature, you can aid them in some ability check, picking locks, knocking down a door, what have you. Or if you're within 5 feet of an enemy, you can aid a creature attacking it to give them advantage. So I'm going to say, hey guy, look at me, so my ranger can shoot him with advantage, or my fighter can swing with advantage. You can hide, making a stealth check, assuming your DM says you're able to based on the people being unseen or not. You can ready an action, which is you come up with a trigger to have your action activate at that point. The examples here, it says, if the cultist steps on the trapdoor, I'll pull the lever. If the goblin steps next to me, I move away. Things like that. However, when you do that, it delays your action to whatever that trigger is, but it uses your reaction to do that. So you will not gain access to your bonus action when that happens, because you're using your reaction, which means you also won't be able to take opportunity attacks. You're using your reaction to do whatever the trigger is. You still have your full action, so if you have multiple attacks, you could say, when the kobold moves near me, I attack, and then if you use the attack action as a reaction, you could swing as many attacks as you have. You can also choose to just forego the trigger at any point. When the trigger occurs, you can either take your reaction right after the trigger finishes or ignore the trigger. Remember, you can only take one reaction per round. When you ready a spell, you basically charge up the energy and get ready to use it as long as it's a casting time of an action. However, if you have a spell up and you ready a spell action, that cancels the concentration on the existing spell. And if you're like, I'm holding a fireball till they come through there and somebody hits you, you have to make a concentration check or lose that fireball. You can search, making either a wisdom perception check or an intelligence investigation check to look for something. Not typically used in combat. Most people wait till after, unless it's highly specific where it's, time sensitive in the middle of the fight that you see something. Or you can use an object. This could be, again, an additional object interaction like I talked about at the beginning, where you draw a sword and stow it. You draw a sword and you push open a door. Things like that. Or it could be activating... it could be drinking a potion. It could be activating your wand. It could be activating your magic staff, your scroll, whatever it is. You can use an object. Now, the reason that's important is certain things. A thief rogue, for instance, I believe at 10th or 13th level, gets an ability to use an object as a bonus action. So you could, theoretically, stab somebody with sneak attack with your dagger and then activate a wand to cast Fireball, all in the same turn, because you can use an object as a bonus action. And that's basically it. That is actions on your turn. That is how Action Surge interacts with that. So you could take a bonus action and then cast a spell and then attack on, you know, depending how you want to use it if you have action surge access. A couple other things that aren't really talked about here. If you cast a spell as a bonus action, you are only able to cast, as your action, you're only able to cast cantrips. That's the way the magic is determined in base D&D. If you guys say that's weird, on Critical Role they don't do that. Well, that's because Matt Mercer has a homebrew rule that he came up with where if you cast a spell as a bonus action, you can cast a regular spell as long as it's not level 2 or higher. That's his homebrew rule. Per base Dungeons & Dragons, if you say use Healing Word to do a bonus action heal on your friend, you're limited to only cantrips as your main attack. Or if you're a sorcerer and you quicken spell an action spell into a bonus action, then you're still limited to only using action-based, cantrips for your actual action. I won't go over how attacks work because I feel like I've covered that. The only thing that I will talk about is when you take the attack action, there are other things you can do rather than just swinging. You can choose to shove or grapple a creature as well, which I will talk about. Opportunity attacks, I've gone over. If you have 2 weapons, if you're using 2-weapon fighting, where you have 1 weapon in this hand and a light weapon in your offhand, when you take an attack action and attack with a light melee weapon that you're holding in one hand, you can use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon in the offhand as a bonus action. You don't add your ability modifier to the damage of this bonus attack unless that ability modifier is negative. And if either weapon can be thrown, you can throw them both instead of making a melee attack. You can throw 1 and then 1 if you would like. There are caveats to that if you take the 2-weapon fighting style. If you take the dual wielder feat, there are ways to get around the light action and not having the offhand ability modifier. However, base, that's another way you can get your bonus action to use it as an offhand attack. However, it doesn't get the modifier. And grappling, when you want to grab a creature or wrestle with it, you can use the attack action to make a special melee attack, a grapple. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action, this replaces 1. So what that means is you could grapple somebody and then attack them while they're grappled if you have multiple attacks. Or if you don't, that's your whole action to grab them. The target of your grapple must be no more than 1 size larger than you, and it must be within your reach. You only need 1 hand to grapple, so that's how you can grab somebody and then shank them with the other hand if you want. You make a strength athletics check against the target's strength or their athletics or their acrobatics, and if you succeed, they're grappled, and then to escape the grapple, they must make an athletics or dexterity acrobatics check against your athletics check. And when you go to, if you want to use your action to, or you want to move with them, if you have them grappled, you can drag them with you, but your speed is halved unless the creature is 2 or more sizes smaller than you. So if you grappled like a little pixie, you can move at your speed with it. And then lastly is shoving a creature. You can choose to, if you have access to, I believe it has to be a shield, or maybe not. Using the attack action, you can make a special melee attack to shove a creature, to either shove them to the ground prone or push them back. If you're able to make multiple attacks, this replaces 1 attack. So again, you can shove somebody to the ground and then clobber on them with advantage with your attack while they're in melee. The target, to shove your target, it's the same thing as it is for grapple. Your athletics versus their athletics or acrobatics. If you win, you either knock them prone or shove them 5 feet back. Again, there are ways around this, like the Shield Master feat will allow you to do this as a bonus action, which actually reminds me, you can take a bonus action before your actual action if you want. You don't, there's nothing that says you have to use your action, that, like an attack, bonus action, attack. You can go bonus action, action, you can go action, bonus action, other, you know, however you want to do it. For things just like that, where if you use the Shield Master feat to shove as a bonus action, you can shove somebody to the ground, prone as a bonus action, and then use your 2 or 3 or 4 attacks to swing on them with advantage to deal extra damage and potentially score yourself a critical hit. But anyway, guys, that's actions in combat. I hope this helps to clear up how Action Surge works how various reactions, bonus actions, object interactions, how that all works in combat and otherwise. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments below. I will credit you in the description. If not, guys, I hope this helps you be a better player, be a better dungeon master, whatever it is. And feel free to link this to your friends and let them know, like, hey, I know we talked about this, but here's how it actually goes down. Feel free to use me as a reference so that they can rage at me and not rage at you for trying to look up the rules. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.